Hello and welcome to the first recap video for me. My name is James McCool. I have my site paydirt.ghost.io and I build models and algorithms and everything like that. And I'm going to be using this as a way to recap all of the things that happened with those models and kind of have that accountability and talk through a little bit of what went right, what went wrong, everything like that. So this is going to be a regular thing, breaking down the models and the results from the night before. I have been doing this in a written form on the site for the DEM sheets, the defensive efficiency matchup sheets for basketball, but now that I'm doing basketball and hockey and League of Legends and pretty soon baseball, it just doesn't really make much sense for me to be doing it in a written form. It would take too long each morning to do that. So going to be doing this in a better way, a more efficient way. Going to be doing screencasts each morning, or maybe I'll do them at night, just depending on how late I'm up. But I wanted to start doing this today so that y'all can get a better look at what the models are and how they perform. So let's just jump right into it. We're going to be going basketball first and then jumping into hockey. Basketball, what is up right now in front of you is the DEM sheets, the defensive efficiency matchup sheets. These, if you don't know, measure the matchups that each position has for the night and gives you the top 10 plays at each position. So, for instance, Ja Morant had the third best matchup in the league for point guards, and specifically Memphis had the best or the third best matchup for point guards in the league over the last 10 games up against Sacramento, who was giving up 8.33% of a boost in fantasy points per minute to opposing point guards, and we'll get into why I mentioned Memphis specifically. James Harden had the second best matchup in the league for shooting guards. DeAndre Hunter had the second best matchup in the league for small forwards. Bam Adebayo had the best matchup possible in the league for power forwards. And Brook Lopez had the best possible matchup in the league for centers. That's what you see down here for this overall area. It'll tell you who the guys who have the best matchups on the slate are. But I do want to point out really quick, and I've pointed this out a couple times, that these matchups apply to all point guards, right? All point guards for Memphis are going to get this boost. All shooting guards for Houston are going to get this boost. All small forwards for Atlanta are going to get this boost. So it might not be that DeAndre Hunter is the one that experiences the best boost. Maybe his backup is going to get the boost. Maybe instead of Brook Lopez, it's Robin Lopez that gets the boost here. But these boosts apply to this position. So centers against Detroit have been getting a 12% boost in their fantasy point per minute stats. So I wanted to just kind of point that out really quick. But let's break down what each player did. So Ja Morant was kind of not great last night. He got overshadowed heavily by DeAnthony Melton, who ended up putting up 41 fantasy points against Sacramento as the backup. He played 23 minutes, put up 24 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, had a steal and a block. And that's just one of the things. That's why I wanted to mention that it is not necessarily the player that's getting the boost, but the position that's getting the boost. Ja Morant only had 20 fantasy points, played 30 minutes, had 19 points, and 2 assists and a rebound, 5 turnovers. So it was definitely DeAnthony Melton that got the boost there, but DeAnthony Melton absolutely crushed it, put up 10x fantasy. James Harden put up 60 fantasy points. It was a blowout. He should have put up 75 or something like that if he'd have played through the fourth quarter. He had a phenomenal game. I don't really need to break that down any farther. Bruce Brown also had an incredible game. I think he put up nearly 10x fantasy points. He stole the show over Derrick Rose, who my stuff didn't necessarily like, so I like to see that. DeAndre Hunter put up 30 fantasy points, I believe. That is definitely over what his regular output is. Yeah, both him and Cam Reddish had good games. So Cam Reddish was 4,200 as a small forward, and DeAndre Hunter was 4,600 as a small forward. They both put up 30 fantasy points. Both had 15 plus points. Both played 30 plus minutes in that matchup. Miami's been a spot to attack with small forwards for most of the season, so definitely like to see that boost work out. Bam Adebayo had one of the best fantasy points outputs on the night. He put up 70.25, which is just ridiculous, like 9x at a 7,800 price tag. He was the second highest fantasy point scorer, up there with Trae Young, Joel Embiid, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Bam Adebayo was somebody who not only did this DEM sheet like him, but the range of outcomes loved him, and I know that everybody in the Discord had a whole bunch of him because I was just kind of gushing over him all night leading up to lock. We definitely tried to have both Bam Adebayo and Joel Embiid, and I know that the people who were able to do that ended up having pretty good nights, even if it was a little bit of a stars and scrubs type lineup. So definitely like what Bam Adebayo was able to do for us there as the top power forward on the night. Brook Lopez was a dud. Only put up 20 fantasy points. I think, 22 fantasy points. Just not good. Played 24 minutes. Put up 18 real-life points. Just didn't do anything else. Brook Lopez's ceiling is generally unlocked from his blocks. He's one of the better blockers in the league, and he had 0 blocks last night against Detroit. So a bit of a dud from him. Robin Lopez put up 5x. He had 9 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist with a steal in 15 minutes. It wasn't great, but he was min-priced. So the people who did better specifically than Brook Lopez in this spot, Joel Embiid obviously did great. He had a good matchup here, so like to see that. Bam Adebayo got the boost here as well over Kelly Olynyk. Bam Adebayo, of course, plays both power forward and center. He's center designated on DraftKings, but he plays power forward. He's a stretch, so he did very, very well. Obviously, a couple other guys here. Marquise Chris was not great. I talked a little bit about fading him in the Discord as well. But yeah, overall, the DEM sheets were pretty good. Like I said, Ja Morant, his boost got stolen by DeAnthony Melton. James Harden had a great night. DeAndre Hunter had a great night. Bam Adebayo had a great night. And Brook Lopez was a bit of a dud. If you went through and used this in combination with the range of outcomes stuff, you probably came up with a lineup that was something like Bruce Brown, James Harden, DeAndre Hunter, Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid. There were definitely good pieces, and if you were able to go with DeAnthony Melton instead of Ja Morant and know that the Memphis point guards were going to be getting that boost and not necessarily just Ja Morant, then you probably had a really, really good night. So that is it for the matchups model. Let's move on to the range of outcomes stuff really quick and break down some of that. I play mostly on DraftKings, so I'm going to be breaking down the DraftKings side of things and kind of looking at a couple of the top plays. So Shaq Harrison was really, he was really popular and he was a really good play, and he was a bit of a letdown. He did 6x. I think he had 18 fantasy points or something like that, but he was definitely very, very good value, very, very good chalk. There was no reason to fade him last night, even if things didn't work out incredibly well. Eric Pascal was somebody who was projected to be very, very low owned, under 5% owned. He did end up putting up 24 fantasy points, I think, which was great for his price and his ownership. And he sat down with 8 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. He missed about half of his last shift because of the blowout. So, he was on pace for 28, 29 fantasy points at 4,300, which would have been fantastic. Kobe White sucked. I know that a lot of people in the Discord are bummed about that. A lot of people in general are bummed about that. He had a bad night, so it is what it is. Bam Adebayo just crushed the slate. Robert Covington put up 36 fantasy points. Joel Embiid crushed the slate. Marquise Chris sucks. James Harden, 60 fantasy points and sat the fourth. So definitely think that this top list was good. These two guys, Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins. If it wasn't a blowout, then I think that Draymond Green probably has a better game, right? He put up 19 fantasy points, I think, some low fantasy output. And if he has a good game, then that game should be closer, and he probably plays the fourth. His 19 fantasy points, I think, is really, I don't think that that's as much a reason. I don't think that that is caused by the Warriors getting blown out. I think that that is the reason why the Warriors specifically got blown out. is because Draymond Green was having a really bad game. And you can, of course, say that Golden State, they should have been big underdogs, and they were big underdogs, and they're a bad team, and that's all fine and dandy. But if Draymond Green has a good game, then that game is closer. We get more out of not only Draymond Green, obviously, but Andrew Wiggins and Eric Pascal. So I was talking about how a Houston Golden State stack was the way that I wanted to go, because I knew that I really wanted Robert Covington. I knew that I really wanted James Harden. There was a little bit of extra value opened up by Eric Gordon being out. So like Danielle House and Ben McLemore and guys like that had a little bit more viability. So I liked that stack. And I think that if Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins perform a little bit better, obviously they were really bad, and that is fine. That makes sense. But I thought that that was the game that had the best chance of not turning into a blowout. I thought that Giannis and the Bucks were just going to annihilate Detroit, and they certainly did. Giannis played some dumb, no-reason minutes in the fourth and got there for everybody who used him, but I thought that Houston and Golden State was the game to target. So a little bit bummed about that, of course, but it is what it is. When you go down a little bit farther, Jordan Poole was solid. Thomas Satoransky, I know, put up around 30 fantasy points. De'Aaron Fox was okay. He wasn't great. So this top 15 was pretty good. You could build out if you used this and then also had Bruce Brown from the DEM sheets. And Bruce Brown, I know that the FanDuel sheets really, really liked Bruce Brown. So if you use Bruce Brown in combination with that top 15 and you tried to get Joel Embiid in there, then I think you probably had a really good night. So I'm pretty happy about the way that the range of outcomes worked out. We will move on to hockey now, which is my latest endeavor and something that I'm having a lot of fun with. So hockey was pretty good, I think. This model has performed really well over the last couple days of using it, over the last 4 or 5 days of using it. It really, really liked Washington and Winnipeg last night. Winnipeg power play 1 unit ended up being the one that was some of the highest scoring stacks on the night. I know that I looked through the leaderboard, and I think 4 of the top 10 players in the big tournament ended up having some combination of Winnipeg full line 1 and power play 1. Mark, I have no idea how to pronounce these names. I'm not even going to try. But Mark, the second skater in that line for power play, ended up having a hat trick, put up 58 fantasy points or something ridiculous like that. So Winnipeg crushed it. Really happy about that. The cash lineups or the cash model really liked Winnipeg. You can see that full line 2 and full line 1, both top 5 lines on the night, and then their power play unit 1 was the top, tied with the Washington power play unit. So definitely really liked Winnipeg, thought they did really well. If you paired them with Montreal, Florida 1, which the GPP model really liked, then you probably ended up having a really good night. Montreal put up 4 goals against Washington, definitely exceeded their team implied total from Vegas. And that's one of the reasons why you use the GPP model, is because it's going to look through and find where the most concentrated source of fantasy points is going to be for each combination of players. And Montreal, their top line is very concentrated. That's where most of the fantasy points for this team comes from. Ottawa ended up putting up a couple runs as well. They ranked really well for the GPP model as well. So a combination of those two things. I think one of the things that I'm going to start doing as I continue to learn how to build for hockey is using the cash model to find what top stack piece I want, the expensive stack piece, and then using the GPP model to find a complementary stack. So last night, Winnipeg power play 1 with Mark Dude, Blake Wheeler, and Neil Pionk. I know that was the stack that was in the top 5 of the leaderboards last night, and then pairing that with Montreal, with what was it? It was full line 1. So who was in that one? Thomas Tatar, Philip Denault, and Brendan Gallagher. I actually think that it was the full line 2 that ended up doing well last night. No, it was full line 1. So definitely something that I want to look at doing a little bit more. And then, like I've said, goalies, pick who fits. They're all pretty similar. So definitely think that this model has been doing well. There's been a lot of good feedback to it in the Discord. Really enjoyed putting this together. It feels a lot like baseball, which I'm kind of getting up towards. The player rankings, Jacob Vrana was bad. Blake Coleman was very popular. He was about 33% owned, so I like seeing that my model really liked him. There were a couple guys here that did okay. Obviously, Alex Ovechkin was projected for the most goals on the slate and ended up having the first goal on the night. Austin Matthews projected high. There were a couple guys that were misses, like Mark, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, didn't rate especially well in the individual player rankings. So I want to kind of take a look at that and figure out why he didn't look so well, but that the Winnipeg Power Play Unit 1 ended up looking really, really well in the model. So there's just a couple things that I do want to look at, but the model has been working out really well. So I'm pretty happy about that. Anyway, that's going to do it. I am happy with how the models put things together last night. I think that the NBA range of outcomes looked really, really good. Had a lot of the main players that you needed to win GPPs. The DEM sheets, again, D'Anthony Melton picked up what John Morant should have had, but outside of that, I think that I'm happy with most of what happened. So I think they did pretty well last night. I'm going to be backlogging everything and making sure that people have access to that too. So thanks for tuning in. This is going to be an everyday thing, just breaking down the results from last night. If you are not already subscribed to the site, go ahead and subscribe. $25 a month is pretty cheap for every single sport, not doing packages stuff. So subscribe to the site, and thanks for hanging out. Let's keep getting better.